Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Solid topic. Let's do it. What is one of the most creepy or disturbing unsolved mysteries ever? Please remember to like, share, post your comment, and subscribe. The number of murders taking place in Texas between Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio along the highway is terrifying. There have been assessments that there have been a full dozen different serial killers working that territory. The Interkaifeck murders. Somebody brutally murdered an entire family, including 2 young children, and then stuck around their house for 2 days, making fires in the fireplace, eating their food, and feeding their animals, and to this day no one knows who or why. The women of Juarez. Over 300, maybe 500 women in Mexico were brutally murdered, and there hasn't been any answers as to who did it. Anytime someone got close or tried to make a progress on the case, it would be stopped. Most of the time it was an American detective who tried, and as soon as it hit Mexico, it would just disappear. I have a feeling it's one huge scandal. 2 Italian cases. The first one is a very big one. Emanuelina Orlandi disappeared in 1983 in Rome or the Vatican City. Could have been involved in the church or the mafia. She was kidnapped and never found again. 2. Ylenia Carisi, daughter of 2 famous Italian singers, Al Bagno and Romina Power, mysteriously disappeared in 1994 in New Orleans. Her mother truly believes she's still alive, and her father believes she died drowning in the Mississippi. The so-called murder-suicide of Harry Horse and Mandy Horn. The inconsistent and blatantly false news reports made a total arse of the situation. I feel Nexpo's video on the situation gathers all the information nicely. For those who don't know, Harry Horse was a game developer who lived with his wife, Mandy, in Scotland. Mandy fell ill with MS, and her rapidly deteriorating health left her increasingly disabled, and Harry was her primary carer. 2 friends were visiting the couple on the night of the incident, and this is where witness statements begin to contrast. Harry was apparently known for his mood swings and odd comments, especially on the night of the incident. He's reported to have said, paraphrased, "It's a wonderful night for killing." Mandy begged for the 2 friends to stay, but they left. Said friends claimed to have left a jacket behind, so a little while later they returned to the house. The door was open. The place was a gruesome, bloodied mess. Their pets were slain. Mandy had been stabbed over 30 times. A broken knife left inside her. Harry had bled out from 47 wounds, including mutilated genitals and slashed arms. This was initially reported as a Romeo and Juliet suicide pact, and then a murder-suicide. Harry was said to have consumed a cocktail of drugs before brutally murdering his wife and pets before turning the knife on himself. But Harry's autopsy reported a total absence of drugs. From Class A's to benzos to paracetamol, there was nothing. The door being open, the friends forgetting a jacket on the infamously cold Shetland Islands, nobody having the slightest clue what happened, none of it added up to me. I may have forgotten a lot of information, and for that I'm very sorry. Honestly, the more you find out, the more confusing it becomes. Yeah, the murder-suicide thing, to me, doesn't really add up when you look at all the factors in the equation. So, what really happened? Who were those guests? The Beaumont children. 3 siblings went to the beach in 1966 and never came home. Nothing has ever been found. The disappearance of Asher Degree had always bothered me. I can't figure out how she could have been influenced to leave her home. The Yuba County 5. 5 men, each with their own mental issues, were driving home one night and took a turn into basically the wilderness. Nobody ever heard from them again, but one witness says he saw a large group of people get out of a car and walk off while he was having a heart attack in his car. Later on, the bodies of 4 of the 5 were found, but Gary Mathias still has not been. One of them were in a ranger shack which had plenty of food and supplies. The other 3 were found scattered throughout the woods, all having died of hypothermia. The shack could have lasted them all enough time to be found, but 4 of them decided to leave it. Nobody knows why they took that turn, or got out of their car, or left the shack. Nobody knows. Theories are all that can be spread. To me, the creepiest part is Gary Mathias was never found. Brandon Swanson's case always boggled my mind. The fact he alerted his parents that he was lost and needed help. They were on the way and the phone with him only to hear his last moments. To know they were so close, but they still haven't found him is terrifying. I think he was run over by farming equipment. The people who own the land where they think he refused to let anyone search the property. The Princess in the Tower. 2 young sons of King Edward IV disappeared while living in the Tower of London under the custody of their uncle Richard, who became King Richard III. In the 1600s, bones were found under a staircase in the tower. They were assumed to be the boys and given a burial in an urn in Westminster Abbey. Those bones have never been DNA tested, and we do not know if they are the boys. All the unsolved shit surrounding Epstein's Island is pretty aft, as there were many high-profile individuals who went there but nothing ever came of it. The Black Dahlia. Everything about it is disturbing. This was clearly the magnum opus of a serial killer, yet it's treated as a bizarre standalone murder body dump. Forensics hasn't got a prayer with all the ham-fisted investigations. The girl's reputation was smeared without proof or reason, and it's so long ago now that nobody really cares. Zodiac Killer. To be honest, I'm sure there's more I don't know about entirely, but the anonymity of not knowing or even knowing is unsettling to me. The way he would send things to the police too, it's so interesting to me. Caspar Hauser for me. Enduring mysteries, violent death, imprisonment for years in sense-deprived conditions, intense desire to be a writer like my father. I know very few unsolved mysteries, but the Susan Powell one is so sad. After her disappearance, her husband was under investigation for her disappearance and killed himself and the kids. She still hasn't been found. The Mothman of Point Pleasant. On November 5th, 1966, 2 young couples were joyriding around in a black 1957 Chevy to a remote hangout spot north of Point Pleasant known as the TNT area. One of the couples was Linda Scarberry and Roger Scarberry. The other was Steve Mallet and Mary Mallet. When they got there, next to the abandoned North Power Plant, they suddenly saw 2 large red eyes, which reflected the light from the car's headlights. Steve noticed it first and pointed it out to the group. That is when they are said to have noticed that the glowing red eyes belonged to a strange creature. They claim to have seen a gray man-like figure with wings go around the corner at the old power plant. They said that the creature didn't run but wobbled like it could keep its balance. Linda described the creature as having circular, fiery red eyes and a body like a man but with wings. They said the creature was about 6 or 7 feet tall with wings folded against the back. Half man, half monster, she said. You could see muscles in its legs. The couples couldn't believe what they had seen. They quickly drove off onto Route 62. Linda yelled for Roger to hurry. The couples then saw the creature on a hill by a large billboard as they went around a curve. It spread its wings and went straight up into the air. They were all terrified and kept yelling for the driver to go faster. The Mothman began gliding back and forth over the back end of their car. We didn't know what it was. I don't think we've ever been so scared, said Linda. As they went along a straight stretch of road, they were going over 100 miles per hour, but the creature was still able to follow them. They saw it in the back window, and they saw the shadow go across from as it flew. They couldn't get away from it. They could also hear the wings hitting the top of the car as they drove. It's even said to have left scratch marks on Roger's 57 Chevy. Squeaked like a big mouse, said Mary Mallet. They were only able to get away from the Mothman when they reached the edge of Point Pleasant. The creature disappeared, veering off into a field as they went into town. The couples continued going into town. They stopped at the local Dairyland as they tried to figure out what to do next. Linda suggested they go to the police, but Steve and Roger thought they'd just laugh at them and wanted to go back to make sure the thing was still there first. The group ended up being too afraid to do that, so they turned around. As they were turning around, they saw a large dead dog laying along the road, which was gone when they went by again later. According to the couples, the winged creature jumped out as they passed where the dead dog was, went over the top of the car, and went through the field on the other side. They drove back into town and parked at Tiny's Diner and decided to contact the police. The teens told their story to Deputy Millard Halstead. They took police that they saw a large winged creature whose eyes glowed red when the car headlights picked it up. They described it as a flying man with a 10-foot wing following their car. Halstead didn't believe them at first, but knew that there weren't troublemakers and saw that they were genuinely terrified. So he actually went out to investigate their story. The couples drove back out to the TNT area with the deputy. Millard shined a spotlight around the area, including the tree lines. Deputy Halstead is said to have heard strange static disturbances coming from his radio that he couldn't explain, but he found no clear sign of the creature itself. The witnesses were sitting in their car and said that they saw shadows circling nearby and a cloud of dust kick up from an adjacent coal yard. The Mallets were too scared to go back to their homes. They stayed at the Scarberry's trailer, turned all the lights on, and stayed awake all night from fear. The following day, Sheriff George Johnson held a press conference to discuss the sightings. The local press began printing the story and named the creature Mothman, based on the comic book character Batman, who had just gotten a television series at the time. Steve Mallet told the local newspaper, "We understand people are laughing at us, but we wouldn't make all this up to us." The same day, the couples went back to the TNT area during daylight and found odd-looking tracks resembling two horseshoes put together, but smooth. Steve saw something fly up inside a boiler when a door was kicked open. No one stayed around long enough to see what it was. After this original sighting, more and more people began reporting seeing similar things, such as Marcella Bennett's sighting, which happened a day later. Hundreds of cars full of eager people swarmed out to the TNT area at night in hopes of seeing the Mothman. A shadow was cast on the valley of Point Pleasant, and thus began the legacy of West Virginia's Mothman. The Springfield, Missouri 3. 3 young adult women disappeared without a trace and no sign of a struggle. No one saw anything of note around the time, and no credible evidence had been presented in the ensuing 30 years. I can recall a few high-profile examples of mysterious circumstances, but it is a total mind F to experience one personally. An acquaintance of mine who worked in my career field disappeared a few years ago, and to my knowledge was never found. Years ago, he and I were slated to work on a project together, and he flaked out at the last second. He said it was mental health issues. We had a small circle of mutual friends. A few months later, he was suddenly gone from the city and where we both lived. I've looked his name up a couple times a year, but haven't found an update. No note, no body, nothing. All kinds of people in our social circle were concerned with his disappearance, but no success in finding him. I wonder if he's out there under an assumed name or even alive. The Vegas shooting. Oh yeah. They went real quiet on that one real fast. Never got any real info on motive, or even if it was the guy they said it was. Dude supposedly brought hundreds of guns into a casino with cameras everywhere, and there isn't more clear footage of him in the process. Not to mention audible gunshots from at least 2 different locations in the video with 2 distinct rates of fire. What the F actually happened here? I mean, you bring up Epstein Island and you get your narrator excited, and then you go to the Las Vegas shooting. I mean, seriously, in a country that is plagued with mass shootings and we're constantly ridiculed around the world, the largest one in American history disappeared from the news cycle that quick. What really happened? And where did all the footage go? The boys on the tracks. Long story short, 2 boys got killed, placed on railroad tracks, and ran over. There was a big cover-up by the police and autopsy doctors. Most witnesses died in obviously murder ways, which were also covered up by same autopsy doctors. The police also were very careless in the investigation and literally left several easily visible body parts being found later on. The official ruling was that they got so high that they fell asleep on the railroad. They were barely high.